Hi, I'm Claire, and today I want to tell you about my favorite reads of 2016. Also, check out my special guest, Tabby, who is chillaxing in the background of this video, which she doesn't normally do, so I'm pretty happy you get to see it this time around. She is definitely my favorite cat of 2016. And now onto the books. Out of the 60-ish books that I read in 2016, I have one favorite graphic novel, one favorite piece of nonfiction, 2 favorite novellas, and 3 favorite novels. So let's get started with my favorite graphic novel of the year. This goes without any kind of a contest to Nimona by Noel Stevenson. It is about Nimona, the central character right here, who is a shapeshifter and decides to appoint herself as the sidekick to Lord Ballister Blackheart, the main mastermind villain of the land, in his everlasting fight against Sir Ambrosius Goldenloin, the hero champion of the people. It is just such a beautiful story. It has so much heart and so much more depth than you would imagine when you read the first chapter and it's all like hijinks, shape-shifting into a shark with boobs. It has just so much more than that, and I can tell that this is something I'm going to be reading again and again in years to come and recommending to people. I have read fanfic of this already. I have written fanfic of this already. For me, it's just a marker of how much I love something if I want to engage with the fandom of it, and this just absolutely makes the cut. Next, my favorite work of nonfiction this year was Hidden Figures, the American Dream and the Untold Story of the Black women mathematicians who helped win the space race. It is very difficult to say the word mathematicians properly. I am sorry about that. I tried to do that about 5 times. This will have to do. This book is by Margot Lee Shetterly, and it does what it says on the tin, which is to tell the story of the African-American women who worked at NASA during the space race and who basically calculated everything. They called them computers because it computed all the numbers. It was such a fascinating read, and although at time it was kind of rage-inducing because you see all the obstacles that these wonderful brilliant women had to face because of being women and because of being African American, it was also just really inspiring to see how they triumphed over those obstacles and really contributed so significantly to the space program. I'm also really glad that I've read the book now, because the movie that is inspired by this book is going to come out in early 2017 in the UK, and I feel like having read the book, I'll have a much better understanding, a much deeper understanding of what goes on in the film. Next are my favorite novellas, of which there are 2, and the first is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. This is something that I was anticipating very highly for 2016 and that I was so glad to be able to finally get my hands on. This is a story about quote-unquote lost children who traveled to fantastical lands after falling through magical portals, and who, when they return to Earth, have to contend with the fact that their anxious parents don't believe that they've really been to a magical land and just want to have them in therapy for a little while and then have them return and be exactly the same as they were when they left, which obviously they're not. So it is the story of these children and what happened to them when they are sent to Eleanor West's home for wayward children, where they can finally meet some other kids that this has happened to, who can tell them that no, they are not imagining things, it really did happen to them, and how are they going to go on with their lives now if they can't get back into that magical land that now feels like home to them. It was one of those books that I had to force myself to read very slowly so that I could savor it, because the prose is so beautiful, but it is super short, and so I didn't want to be finished too quickly. This is another one that I've seen on several people's best of 2016 list, and I'm really happy, because that means that hopefully Shauna Maguire will be hired to do many more of these and other novellas for Tor.com. She already has 2 new Tor.com novellas due to be released in 2017, one of which is a prequel to Every Heart a Doorway, so I am super excited for both of those. My other favorite novella this year was Superior by Jessica Lack. This is an absolutely adorable romance story about a young man who's interning for the biggest superhero in town, Captain Superior, and who ends up falling for the intern slash minion guy who works for the biggest, baddest super villain in town. We follow these 2 young men and how they come together, and much like in Nimona, there's a lot of exploration of what makes someone good, what makes someone bad, and whether someone is just good because they have the label of superhero, or whether someone's just bad because they have the label of supervillain, or in this case minion to a supervillain, attached. It's just a very sweet story that's well executed, and I can see myself coming back to it regularly. It made it onto my best of 2016 list, mostly because it was something that I really hadn't read in original fiction before, and I was so glad that it was there. If you're anything like me in terms of being fanish and enjoying fandom, particularly if you, like me, are in the Marvel fandom, you definitely need to pick up this book and read it, because it is just delightful. And finally, on to the novels. My first favorite novel of the year is one that I read really early on in 2016, and it is Signal to Noise by Silvia Moreno Garcia. The book takes place in Mexico City, which is a hometown of our protagonist Meche, and it takes place half when she is in high school in Mexico City in the 1980s, and half in the present day when she is coming back from Europe, where she lives and works abroad, to Mexico City to bury her estranged father. And she encounters again her best friends from high school, Daniela and Sebastian, and she has to deal with some stuff that happened between them when they were all in high school and they were using music to practice magic. This was really cool. Like, the music and magic aspect was really great, and the story of them as teenagers as well as Meche when she comes back, that was all really interesting, but mostly I really loved it because I felt like it nailed the thing about being an expat, living abroad, and then coming back home after an extended period of living abroad. That to me felt so true to my own experience that it really struck a chord, and that is why I'm really remembering this book. Another favorite novel of the year for me was Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is a novel about Agnieszka, who lives in a small valley that she absolutely loves, but it is being threatened day in and day out by this evil wood that creeps on the outskirts of the valley and tries to get in and gain ground. Agnieszka is chosen by the wizard that lives nearby, who is called the Dragon, to be his servant for the next 10 years. And the dragon has noticed that Agnieszka has magic, and so he trains her to use her power. Her power is a bit different to his, so they kind of clash on how he's going to teach her, but ultimately they work together to try and take on the wood. I think the wood is such a great villain. I wasn't super convinced about Agnieszka's journey and the relationship she has with Dragon at the very beginning, but Novik makes the great choice of separating them for a portion of the book so that Agnieszka can function on her own and kind of come into her own as a main character, which I think worked really well. I thought the resolution of the book worked really well. Obviously I'm not gonna say, but again, the wood is such a great villain and it has such great consequences to the people that it touches. And finally, we have Sorcerer to the Crown by Zen Cho, which in addition to being a fantastic novel, is also the shiniest book that I own. This story follows Zacharias Wythe, the first black sorcerer royal in England, and all the trouble he has to contend with in his position, which include racism and figuring out why the levels of atmospheric magic in England are going steadily downwards, and also racism and someone trying to kill him, and also some more racism. Our other main character is a Prunella gentleman, who is a young woman who lives in a school for teaching magic to young noble women, which means a school for teaching young noble women to curb their magic and never ever use it ever under any circumstance. And the problem is that Prunella has altogether too much magic that she can't really control and that she doesn't really want to control. So when Zacharias visits the school and sees how the girls are treated, Prunella convinces him to take her along to London with him so that she can make her fortune, probably by selling the treasures that she's found in a suitcase that came to her from her long dead father. And of course shenanigans ensue, as they are wont to do in this type of story. Now I really like the genre of fantasy of manor in general, and this did a really great job of not only giving me the kind of plot that I enjoy in a fantasy of manors, with magical shenanigans and some really cool world building and some difficult choices that people have to make, but it was also really, really adorable and delightful and funny. It has a great sense of humor, and I can really believe in the relationship between Zacharias and Prunella. I can really root for them in a way that, for instance, in Uprooted, I had a bit of trouble doing because it felt a bit more driven by the plot than driven by the people, and here everything felt like it was really driven by the characters. I believe this is getting a sequel. I don't know if it's coming out in 2017 or later, but in any case I will be delighted to read more in this universe whenever more comes out. So that's it. These were my favorite things that I read in 2016. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of them, if you've liked them, or if you have different favorites for 2016. If you'd like to see more from me, check out the sidebar right here for more videos. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for new videos from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon. And I don't know if you can hear the cat snore really loudly, but it is the cutest thing in the world.